All right, Mr. Ahmed here for 5.4, part number 2. These are some more challenging problems with our isosceles and equilateral triangles. The first example here that I'm looking at, I see lots of triangles in this figure, all right? I mean, I have a little triangle here, little one here, big one all the way around, another bigger one. I'm looking for the special ones. The first thing that I'm kind of noticing here is this is marked with 1 tick mark. This whole thing is marked with 1 tick mark. And this whole thing is marked with 1 tick mark. So this triangle here, that I'm going to highlight in red, appears to be a special one. All 3 angles are congruent. So if all 3 angles of that triangle are congruent, that must mean x has to be 8, because all 3 sides have to be congruent. Now with the next part, I am looking at this triangle because I see these 2 angles are congruent down at the base. So if these 2 angles are congruent with 2 tick marks, that means the sides opposite them are congruent as well. So 2y also has to be equal to 8. So y is equal to 4. Okay, next one's pretty tough. All right, so I know that these 2 angles are congruent because the sides are congruent. So if it has 2 congruent sides, it has 2 congruent angles. However, I cannot solve that equation. 8x minus 1 equals 6y plus 1. Can't solve it. 2 variables. So I know that this top angle is 22. I need to figure out what these 2 angles are. They are both equal to the same amount. So I'll pick a whole new variable. I'm going to say r and r. So 22 plus r has to equal 180. And then we can solve that. Combine the 2 r's together. So we have 22 plus 2r equals 180. Minus our 22. And 180 minus 22 is 158. And now we have to divide both sides by 2. And r is equal to 79. So if r is 79, that tells me that each one of these angles is also 79 degrees. So now I can set up my equation to find x, and I can set up another equation to find y. So I would need to say that 79 equals 8x minus 1, and we can solve it. 80 equals 8x, x equals 10. So we got x. Now to find y, I would say 79 is equal to 6y plus 1. And then we can solve that as well. Subtract 1, 78 equals 6y, and 78 divided by 6 is 13. So we found both those. This is a tough one. If you have 2 separate variables, you can probably figure out what these 2 angles are. So be prepared for one of those. That one's tricky. Next one says find the perimeter. So let's see here. I don't see any congruent marks. These 2 sides aren't marked, angles aren't marked, but I can find the 3rd angle. So I need to figure out what this 3rd angle is first. I'm going to take 180 minus 102 minus 39 to find the 3rd angle, and it ends up being 39 degrees. I had to find that. So I took 180 minus 102 minus 39, and that's 39. So our missing angle is 39 degrees, okay? Subtracted. Now, since I know these 2 angles are congruent, that means the sides opposite them are congruent. So now I can solve for x. 2x plus 7 is equal to 5x minus 8. Now when I solve, let's see here, I'm going to subtract 2x. So minus 2x minus 2x, and now I got 7 equals 3x minus 8. Add the 8, 15 equals 3x, x is equal to 5. So now that we know what x is equal to, the question says to find the perimeter. So to find the perimeter, I have to put x back in to figure out the sides. So 6 times 5 is 30, 17, and 25 minus 8 is 17. Well, I should have known that because those sides were congruent. So add up the 3 sides. The perimeter is equal to 30 plus 17 plus 17. And we get 64. And it's just units. I don't know if it's feet, inches, etc. So we got it. So I had to find the missing angle first, determine it was isosceles, then I could solve. All right, a couple U tries. Go ahead and hit pause here and see how you do on these. Just these two, not the proofs. All right, hopefully you had some success. Isosceles triangle, base angles congruent, sides opposite them congruent. So 2x minus 1 has to equal x plus 4. Subtract x, x minus 1 equals 4, add 1, and x is equal to 5. So we should get x equal 5. So when I plug it back in, 5 plus 4 is 9 feet, and 9 feet. Perimeter, add them all up. 9 plus 17 is 25 feet. Add up the three sides to find the perimeter. All right, another one of these tricky ones, find x, find y. Well, let's see here. This one's not quite as bad. These two sides are congruent, so that means these two angles are congruent, opposite them, base angles. So 6y minus 5 has to equal 10y minus 41. Now when I'm solving, subtract 6y, negative 5 equals 4y minus 41. Add our 41. And negative 5 plus 41 is 36 equals 4y. Y is equal to 9. So now I know what y is equal to. That really didn't help me find x very much. However, I can put it back in and figure out what these two angles are. So when I plug it back in, 10 times 9 minus 41 is 49 degrees. We had to plug it back in. When I plug it back in, I get 49 degrees for this angle. This one should also be 49 degrees. 6 times 9 is 54. Minus 5 is also 49. So now I know these two angles. That means I could set up an equation to find x. 49 plus 49. I'm going to write this in a different color. So I'm running out of space here a little bit. I'm going to go right here. 49 plus 49 plus the third angle, 12x, plus 22 has to equal 180 degrees because all three angles add up to 180. Now I can solve, combine like terms. 49 plus 49 is 98, plus 22 is 120. So we have 120 plus 12x equals 180. Subtract our 120, we get 12x equals 60. And 60 divided by 12 is 5. So x is equal to 5. So that one was a little bit tougher too, took a bit more work. All right, a couple proofs here. These ones are pretty short. It says, given triangle AB is congruent to AE. So AB congruent to AE. So that's our given. AB is congruent to AE. Given. Start with what we know. We need to show that angle B is congruent to angle E. So since these two sides are congruent, that means that the two angles have to be. It's just two steps. Angle B has to be congruent. That's a bad B. Angle B is indeed congruent to angle E. And my reason is we went from sides to congruent angles. So that is the converse of base angles theorem. All right, if two sides are congruent, then the angles opposite them are congruent. And lastly, we're supposed to prove that the triangle is isosceles. It's going to take 3 steps. So step 1, use our given. Angle ACD is congruent to angle ADC. So I need to mark that. ACD congruent to ADC, congruent. we need to prove that ACD is isosceles, so this little piece in between. So since these two angles are congruent, I can then state that these two sides are congruent. So AC is congruent to AD. Oop, I forgot to write given. Reason, we went if two congruent angles, then two congruent sides. That's the converse of base angles theorem. Okay, now for us to state that the triangle is isosceles, well, we can. It has two congruent sides. So step 3, triangle ACD is isosceles. Reason, definition of isosceles triangle. If it has two congruent sides, then it is isosceles. All right, that's it for today. Have a good one.